Let's welcome Janeal Ford. Woo! Thank you, everybody, for helping
Keep your
out with
arms
that.
and legs inside the presentation at all times. So, who am I? My name is Janeal Ford, and I am with Fordable Freelance. I have a background in fundraising and nonprofit management. I've been doing that for about 15 years. I started my business about a year ago after just so many years of being in the nonprofit. I just thought, I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit, and my daughter, she was raised and left the nest, and so I thought, okay, why not? I'm going to pull the trigger. So I actually just left what I called was a job. I took this job in technology for about 9 months and just decided, no, this isn't, I just need to do this. So 2 weeks ago, I left my job, and here I am full-time in my business. So I'm really excited to be here. Yay! And of course, at Linda's prompting, I'm like, I want to just quit my job. She's like, just do it. So what my business does is I connect your passion to the abundant resources all around. And I do that through grant management, through education and training and consulting. All right. Okay. So tonight I want to talk about who is giving, who's giving all the money. Some considerations you need to think about before you set out to raise money. The understanding that fundraising it's really not about the money. You think it is, but it really isn't. And the best fundraisers know that. I want to talk about the key concepts in designing a fundraising program, and then the pros and cons of fundraising techniques. So who gives? Who is going to give you money? I just want to give you some big picture view here. So this is the USA Giving, compiles all of the charitable giving for the year, and they come out with a nice report. In 2013, $335 billion was given across the United States, and this is who gave that money. So you'll see that 72% of the funds are given by individuals, 5% corporations. Bequests is also individuals, because that's essentially individuals leaving their will or estate to a charity, and then 15% is foundations. So this is who gets it. I hope you guys can see that. Obviously religion is a fairly sizable piece of the pie. All those individuals giving their tithes to their church and house of worship, that's a big chunk. But you can see education, human services, probably your charity is in there somewhere. And if you calculate it by the $335 billion, you can see how much might be available to your charity. Government's also a source of money for charities. So this right here is kind of really high level where the money goes. Where does our government spend money? So there's 65%. I have some numbers here. I want to make sure that I get it right here. So 65% is mandatory spending. Every year, they don't have even decide about all that money. It's already spent. So 65% of the budget's already determined. Most of that is Social Security, it's veterans benefits, it's transportation, a little bit of agriculture, and that's about 2.56 trillion with a T dollars. So discretionary spending is really where your organization might be able to access some funds, and that is $1.16 trillion every year that's available. And this is kind of where it's spread out. You can kind of see, maybe your charity kind of fits within one of these areas. So, the discretionary money is, Congress will say, we need to do something about homeless youth in our country, and they'll pass laws. Then they'll once those laws are passed, they'll come up with documents and rules, and then they'll say, all right, nonprofits, tell us how you're going to solve this problem. Actually, they kind of tell you how you're going to solve the problem, and you have to agree, but a lot of times you get some pretty big bucks through the government. It's also they're the most legalistic and prescriptive donor you'll ever work with. They have a lot of requirements. So a lot of times people just think about cash when they think about fundraising, but really there's other resources that go into fundraising. Collaboration. A lot of times people, they think, I've got an idea. They see a problem in the community and they create a nonprofit and they just kind of operate in a vacuum and they think they're alone and we're the only ones doing this. We're so unique. There's nobody like us out there. I'm going to say BS. That you should really scan the environment. Take a look at who's doing what you're doing or is similar to what you're doing. Find a way to complement each other in the work that you're doing and not duplicate. That's a really important resource, is collaboration. Human resources, of course, that's volunteer time. Volunteers, what would we do without our volunteers? And they also become cash donors, so they're really important. And then, of course, in kind, it's not cash, but to get a donated vehicle or equipment, or it's like money in the bank for helping you with your mission. So I put this slide in here because where did my notes go? Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. She moved it. Like, oh my gosh, this is. Where's my podium? Where's my podium? No, I actually have some handouts, but. Oh yeah. Yeah, oh well, you can leave it there. I want to have it close by, if I need to. I'm just kidding. Often nonprofits, I guess in my experience, I've seen this, that we tend to operate in a mode of scarcity. There's never enough, and we can't do that. No, we can't do that. Oh, it's got to always be free. No, we can't sign on like that. No, it's about what you don't have. And I would argue that there is enough. There are resources out there for your charity, for the work that you want to do, and that believe in abundance. Believe it's going to be there, and it will. And so as a fundraiser, that's what I hang my hat on every single day, that there is enough. And really it's just a matter of being strategic, thoughtful, and focused on going after it. So that's my soapbox. What should I consider before fundraising? So I just wanted to this is kind of a real boring part, but we got to go through it. So you got to have a designation as a 501c3. This is required for tax deduction. There's a lot of different 501c whatevers, and many of you may have gone through this process of looking at all of that. Well, the only one that will allow a charitable deduction is a 501c3. So that's important. Think about what kind of gifts you'll be receiving. How are you going to acknowledge those gifts? How are you going to track that money? How are you going to thank and recognize those donors as those funds come in? And then you need to think about developing a fundraising plan. And somebody was saying that they wanted to develop a business plan. Well, a fundraising plan is pretty much the sidecar to your development plan, or I mean your business plan. Your business plan talks about the strategies of, we're going to feed 50,000 people, we're going to, eliminate homelessness, we're going to, whatever the strategies are that your charity is focusing on, those are the operations. It's going to take money. So then the fundraising plan kind of comes alongside, and you have to think about, and the fundraising plan is like, how are we going to raise that money? Are we going to do events? Are we going to write grants? Are we going to have direct mail? And so it's also just as thoughtful as your business plan, and it helps create focus around how you're going to raise money for your charity. Okay, so you got to think a little bit about ethics. Darn those ethics. Tonight I actually brought a handout here. You want to help me hand this out? This is just the AFP's Code of Ethical Principles Standards, and you're not, yeah, you can't read that. But it's very important. Essentially, the most important thing that I'll highlight on it is that it's considered unethical for professional fundraisers to charge a percentage of funds. So if you hire a fundraiser, or if you want to raise money for a charity, you can't say, all right, I'll just take a commission. I'll just take 10% of whatever I bring in. That's unethical. If it kind of skews the charitable intent of giving. So it can't be tied to any one donor. I've seen groups that will say, all right, meet your fundraising goal and we'll give you a bonus. And that's fine. But it's not tied to any one person. So I always like to say that. I said that last time I was here, and it's just often people don't get that because it's completely opposite in the corporate side of the world. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Yes? Yeah, I guess, you can do this or that. I guess in this instance, it's more of as a professional fundraiser, like I'm in freelance work, and for me to say, all right, well, yeah, I'll write that grant for $1 million, I'll just take 2%, that's unethical in the world of fundraising. So, yes, that's right, it's not legal. No, I think that's different. I think that's like horse trading. Yeah, that's a little different. Yeah. I mean, in the sales world, the commission is that's part of the deal. You land a deal, you can get a certain percentage of it, but not in fundraising. So I charge an hourly rate or a project rate. So I'm going to charge you based on the quantity of work that I do for you, and it's not necessarily tied to the amount that's raised or whatever. So.
And a good point on that is that if you write a grant, even if it doesn't get approved, we still have to pay you.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of times it's a lot of work to put into assembling a grant. So you don't want to do it for free. It's really, it's a lot of work. So I charge based on the quantity of work that goes into it. And it could be $1 million grant, or it could be a $10,000 grant. So it just depends. So.
What would be the minimum you would charge somebody?
You can go at it a different way. It depends on the quantity of time and effort that goes into the work. I've seen for just specifically for grant writing, I've seen fees range anywhere from $40 an hour to $180 an hour. Consultants, maybe 75 to, and then, if you look at the size of a proposal, if you're going the hourly rate, a federal proposal might take upwards of 70 to 80 hours to complete. So, but some of them may only take 4 or 5. So it just depends. So, yeah.
And as a grant writer, you would know where to send that to versus
Yeah, I would never go the shotgun approach. Yeah.
When I was with another nonprofit, they were sending to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, but what you're doing is you're sending out to people that they are supporting kids. So why not them to support you?
Yeah, and I think that's where your fundraising plan comes into play. It's got to be thoughtful and strategic. Otherwise, you're just burning. It's just a waste of time. So, and then of course there's a donor bill of rights. The donor. I have this as a handout too. I don't have as many as the last one, but I'll let you pass that out. The donor has a right to have access to your financial statements. The donor has a right to say, I don't want my name on a list. They have a right to expect that all relationships with individuals are professional. There's not a conflict of interest. So the donors have rights. It really is about the donors in fundraising. Okay. You got to think about what the state requires. I've stumbled upon these over the years. So the state actually, and here in California, the state actually requires that you document and report raffle activity. Have you guys done that before? Yeah, in Utah, I moved here from Utah, and in Utah it was, of course, they didn't have raffles, so so that was something new. But they also require that you have a charitable solicitation permit. So, so you got to be thoughtful about some of that before you go out and raise money. Okay, so fundraising, it's not about the money. It's about relationships. So where do you see this relationship going? So the best way that I have had fundraising described to me is they've paralleled it with dating or courtship to marriage. And while I've never been married, I'd like to think I know something about fundraising. I don't know about marriage. But it's still the same process. And I think you'll understand when I get done. So when we look for a lifelong partner, we want to find somebody that is compatible, that shares our values, somebody who's willing to make a commitment to the relationship. And charities are also looking for partners in their mission. They're looking for people who share the same values. And, we identify dates a bunch of different ways. We might be introduced by friends. We might go online and do the online dating. We may just meet people in different social settings or doing the things that we enjoy. And if there's, an interest, then you let's go to coffee. And then, you go to coffee, and then you go to lunch, and then you go to dinner, and then and it goes from there. I always thought first dates were like job interviews, especially the online ones. Those were the worst. I don't do that anymore. It's basically a screening and evaluation process. I don't like first dates if it's, they're a stranger. They're just no fun. But if you were to ask someone to marry you on the first date, this is exactly what you would get. And that's exactly what your donor is going to get if you ask for money on the first time you meet them. It's really the same. Most of us can think of a time when we've been aggressively solicited for a gift, or even a panhandler on the street. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to give that way. You don't hear from them again, and it's just not fun. But typically, if you go on a date and you like each other, and there's a connection, then you move to the courtship period. And in fundraising, that's the cultivation time. And that's when you are just being continuously together and enjoying things. It's, in fundraising, it's maybe you invite them on a program tour. Maybe they come to an event. Maybe it's just a phone call to say, hey, I just wanted to let you know about this program that I thought you might be interested in. There's no asking for money during that time at all. And then at some point, it depends on the donor. Just like with any relationship, you've met people who've gotten married after 3 weeks and they've been married for 30 years, and you know people who have been dating for several years and not married. So sometimes it takes time. But eventually, there comes a time when they're sitting across from you, and you're going to ask. They know you're going to ask. They know why they're there, and they just don't know the number you're going to throw at them. They just don't know that, and they're thinking, I'm not sure how much they're going to ask me for. But you've done all your work. You've built it up. You have a genuine relationship with that person. You understand their needs and interests. You've courted them for a project that touches their heart, and it's real. It's a genuine relationship. And so, when you eventually pop the question, could you give us $10,000? You just need to wait for their response. That's the hardest part. You just got to be quiet. And they're thinking about, well, where could I pull it from, and that sort of thing. And of course that goes into those are kind of the major gifts scenario. But at the end of the day, that is fundraising right there. It's all about those relationships that you build with people. It's not about the money. The best fundraising programs know this. They know that it's about consistency. So I want to share a story with you. So this little van here, I used to work for an agency in Utah, and they did homeless street outreach. And we would load this van with socks and water and food, and we would seek out the homeless camps, and we would provide these basic need items to the homeless folks on the street. Most people who are homeless their lives are marked by trauma. They distrust everybody. I mean, so they don't really want to get close to you. And the whole purpose of this program is to build a basic level of trust with these homeless folks on the street. And so what happens is these social workers will go out in this van, and I remember one time this guy says, gosh, I went out to this guy's camp 3 times before he would even let me have a conversation with him. And I just would put food around the perimeter, and then eventually I could have a conversation with him. And what he wants to do is he wants to kind of see what his needs are. He wants to hear, maybe this homeless person has a mental illness or a substance abuse addiction, and so he's thinking about how he can help him. And eventually he wants to put him in his van and take him into detox or the homeless shelter or wherever that is. But that homeless person, that individual person who's experiencing homelessness, is not going to get in that van unless he trusts that guy. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that program, it's through the consistency of, hey Bob, I'll be here next week. I see you need a new pair of shoes. I'm going to see if I can go down to the Bishop Storehouse and find a pair of shoes for you. I'll be here next Thursday. And then you show up next Thursday. It's about that consistency and those touches over time and that genuine, I'm here for you, that builds a basic level of trust. And that is what is needed for fundraising. Only it's on the whole, maybe other socioeconomic scale. But the relationships are mutually beneficial, and they're real. So effective philanthropy, it doesn't just happen, it's designed. It really is, it's very thoughtful, and it's respectful, and it knows, I don't want your $25 gift for me to go away. I want to spend some time with you and see if there's a good fit for what your interests are and what my charity is doing. Good fundraising is that's good fundraising. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is a pretty standard chart that you'll see in any sort of fundraising training. One group, they called it the cultivation superhighway, or it's just kind of a donor engagement track. So basically you're going to identify potential donors. These could be people who've already made a gift to your organization. This could be people who like children or seniors or what your charity is doing. And then you're going to cultivate them, and that cultivation is really the touches over time, understanding their needs, understanding how they like to give. It's very thoughtful. And then at some point there's a solicitation. The solicitation could be an event, it could be a direct mail piece, it could be a face-to-face. And then once they make a gift, you need to recognize them. And recognition is simply thank you for your gift. And then stewardship is telling them how their gift has made a difference, so the impact of their gift. Sometimes you can see them together, but they are very distinct. Stewardship is really about conveying the impact that their money made. So this is the donor pyramid. This is another, you'll see this in any fundraising training. So essentially, the idea is to move your donors up this pyramid. So at the bottom of the pyramid, these are your occasional donors or your prospects. So these are the kind of one-off gifts that you might receive. The $10 that we got because Bob's friend was there and he wanted to make a gift. Or it's people who are potential donors. And so then annual giving is, so when you think about your charity and you look at the year, January to December, that's your annual operating year. So your annual donors are people who will come on board and they'll make a gift every year. Some of them it might be they come to your event every year and make a $100 gift. Some of them it might be that they are from a foundation, they give you $10,000 every year. So that's what the annual donors are. Major gifts are, major gifts are defined based on the organization. I've worked in organizations where a major gift is $1,000. I've worked in organizations, or I've heard of organizations like at the university level, it might be $500,000 or $1 million. So a major gift is really, it varies based on the organization. And it's whatever a major gift is to that organization. And then planned gifts are gifts that people leave in their will or estate plan. So they leave the organization in their will. And these are your best friends up there. They love you so much that they are willing to support you even in death. So your planned gift donors are real special people. So the idea is if you were to, combine this chart, so you're moving people around and you're trying to lift them up. You're trying to lift them up to whatever is possible. Some people have a giving budget of, like I used to think, when I do an event, some people walk in and think, I could spend $250 tonight. Maybe I'll go look at the silent auction tables and spend it that way. Some people will walk in and say, if I'm prompted, I could probably lift my paddle and spend 15 grand tonight. So you want to maximize that giving budget of the people that come to your events or engaged in your organization, but ultimately you want to move them up this pyramid. Okay, so I want to talk just a little bit about some of the traditional fundraising techniques, some of the pros and cons to them, and I guess I just want to say that when you think about putting a fundraising program together, it's about diversity, just like an investment strategy. You don't want to put everything into one bucket because it creates risk for you. So there's like human services tend to be, I've worked for human service organizations that are really government heavy. And what happens is government cuts money and then they realize a huge hit. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So if you have this diversified fundraising strategy where maybe you get some from government, maybe you get some from foundations, corporations, individuals, you're going to spread that risk. It's really the same idea. So, and there's pros and cons to every single technique. So it takes a little bit of thought. So the first one's direct mail. We've all received these, in the mail with the address labels and the 3-page letter that nobody reads, or, well, I guess if you're a direct mail prospect, that you're going to read it, you're going to love it, and you're going to make a gift that way. I'm not a direct mail prospect. But so the pros are that, this is a way to get new donors. It builds a nice revenue stream over time. The gift size is fairly low, $25. That's actually kind of high, and some direct mail people would say that's high to get a gift of $25. So they're, $10 here, $10 there. But over time, you can build that up to a nice revenue stream. I've worked for organizations where they got almost $1 million in direct mail, and it was from 20 or 30,000 people, and they gave $10 and $20 a piece, you know. So, and it also feeds other fundraising mediums. So what I mean by that is that it's pretty cold, I guess. I don't know. That's probably a better word for that. If you shoot out a mailer and somebody responds with a gift, wow, you didn't do any. It's not about money, but you didn't do anything for that money. So it feeds other fundraising mediums because they just identified themselves as someone that you should get to know. And so they may have the potential to give more or get involved in another way. And then the income that comes in is primarily unrestricted. That means that you can use that for general operating or keeping the lights on or whatever. So there's most flexibility in it, which is really nice. The cons are it's expensive. If you're not thoughtful about who you're sending those mailers to, you're going to burn through a lot of cash. Yeah, so you got to be really thoughtful about it. I would probably I would outsource it myself, at least like an acquisition mailing. An acquisition mailing, they just shoot a big net out, and it costs a lot of money. They don't know. They're just shooting it out to several zip codes, and they try to be thoughtful about it, and then they look to see what comes back in. Most of the time, that is a loss, and then what happens is those gifts that have come in, they'll recoup it over time. So it can be very expensive. It's fairly impersonal. It can be very passive. I mean, it's a letter, and it has a nice story, and it might have a compelling word in it, but it's fairly impersonal. The gift size is fairly small, and like I said, it requires really thoughtful segmentation of your markets, or it can be very expensive. Okay, events. This is what people think of first. On the pro side, it reminds people of your mission. It gives people an experience. It's visible. Most of the time, the money that comes in is unrestricted. Unrestricted cash is king in nonprofits because it allows you the flexibility to use it how it's needed. And most of the time, events are that way. It can be a team-building event. The volunteers and the people that are engaged through the event there's like this bonding thing that happens. It's just, and it can be a lot of fun. And it's another way to get new donors. So you have an existing donor, they bring a friend to the event, that friend is wowed by your program, and they can become a new donor. On the con side, it's what most think of first, but it's the highest cost per dollar raised. And what I mean by that is that you will sink a lot of cash and time into an event and not necessarily get as great a return as some of the other techniques. So you have to be very, very thoughtful about the expenses on an event because they can just go sky high, and by the time it's over, you don't have a whole lot of money. And there's a lot of naysayers about events these days in the fundraising circles, but I would say that the pros, you need an event in your lineup because it gives people an experience, and sometimes that's a difficult thing to create for donors is an experience, and it's a visible, tactical way to share your mission with them, and so the approach now is instead of thinking of it as a fundraiser, you think of it as a friend raiser. It's about bringing people in and not necessarily money. And so you don't look at the bottom line so much, you look at this is a technique for us to bring people to the table. Yes, and so it's time intensive to plan and coordinate, and there's tons of back office work. For every event, Linda loves events, and they're special people. that like there's a fire in them, and I've done a lot of events over the years, and they can be fun, but they really are a ton of work. Okay, so major gifts. So there's the lowest cost per dollar raised. That's obviously you're going to raise a lot of money in one gift. So it's highly personable. It's high touch. It's like I described. It's a courtship. It's a real courtship. It engages the board in their connections, and it can be restricted or unrestricted. So some donors, they may have a particular interest in your organization, and even though you've gone through that whole courtship and you need unrestricted cash, you're going to get less. You're going to get less if you ask that person for general operating support. But if you ask for a gift within their sweet spot, within what resonates with them, they'll give more. You ultimately want to get, maximize what you can get from them. You don't want to undersell them. You don't want to ask for too little, and you don't want to ask for too much. So sometimes, you have to get it restricted in order to get it. On the con side, it's very time intensive. I mean, that's time intensive to build the relationship. It's highly customized. I remember we had a donor at the food bank, and her and her husband owned a dealership, but she loved Grey Goose vodka. So for Christmas, we bought her a bottle of Grey Goose vodka. It was very personal. It was, wasn't something we would do for every donor, but it was custom. Her family gave $50,000 a year to the organization. She could have a bottle of Grey Goose vodka. And it wasn't just some trinket or, it was thoughtful. It was very thoughtful. So Major Gifts is very thoughtful. It also requires just a lot of paperwork and kind of tracking systems as you think about your lists of donors and how you're working with them and what's the next step. It takes a little bit of thought to do that. And then here's just another follow-up chart. I just love this chart because this is, so if you think about all your donors are people who love you, you want that to get them to love you. That's what you want. So this chart says there's people with high capacity and high affinity. That's how much they love you. So A people, they love you and they have a lot of money. B people, they have high capacity, so they have a lot of money, but they don't necessarily love you. Maybe they just like you. C is they have low capacity, but they love you. So that's mostly, a lot of times, that's going to be your volunteers. And then D is your low capacity, low affinity, lop them off. You don't want to spend your time on those folks. It's just, there's only so many hours in the day. So when you're thinking about major gifts, or even just as a strategy for fundraising, you're going to spend time with your A's. You're going to love on them, but they're in the fold, and that you're going to make sure that they stay loving you. But you're going to spend most of your time on the B group, because the B group has the most potential. They have high capacity, and if they're already in your view, they may already like you even just a little bit. So you just need to think about, how do we get them to love our charity and love our mission? Maybe they made a smaller gift. Oh, I'll tell you a story. I had a donor, once again, this was at the food bank, and we were in a big capital campaign to raise $10 million for a new warehouse. And this gal was identified by our consultant. She's like, she made a big gift to this other campaign, and maybe we should think about getting in touch with her. And so I did. I called her up, and she had made a $25 gift, is all in our database, and it was like several years ago, and I thought, wow, okay. So I connected with her, and I never did get to meet her face to face, but she made a $250,000 commitment to the campaign. And I had voicemails, and we talked several times. I sent her our case for support, and I couldn't believe that she committed to $250,000 just without even us really sitting down and having us ask her. But she did, and so then, of course, the next step for me was, wow, we just moved her, we moved her up, but she still doesn't necessarily love us.
Did you actually ask her for money, or was it just through, she liked you?
Yes, she made the commitment. She knew us. We connected with her, and I told her about the case, but she lived several hours away, and so it was kind of a long distance love affair, I guess, if you will. So so after she made that gift, it became a high priority for me to get in front of her and have her see the new warehouse, because that's a significant gift, and that needs to be honored. And so anyway, but she didn't feel any. Imagine if we would have really had a tight relationship, what her gift would have been. So I guess my point is you can't just discount someone because they've made a $25 gift, that they may have real capacity, and that you should just be really thoughtful about it. So 10 minutes, okay. There was something else I was going to say about that, but yeah, that was pretty significant. So.
Is that your biggest donation?
No, actually, $2.5 million was, and if you look at a $2.5 million gift from an individual or an organization, it's extremely time intensive, and I would say that gift probably, I'm going to guess, maybe 15, 20 meetings before we even got the commitment that they were in for $2.5 million. And then but what it is it's a reflection of the relationship. It is real. It's a real relationship. And they were involved in that campaign the whole way through. They had their guys come out and help with the warehouse, and they had a food distribution group, and so they actually, and when we were ready to do the ribbon cutting, they brought food into the warehouse. And so it's really a very, they're right there alongside you. And then I've had other gifts. I remember one gift, it was $500,000. It was crazy. We went to meet with this gentleman. He owned a big construction company, and anyway, it was me and the executive director and the CEO. He was talking about the project and where we were with it, and that we might need some help with construction, and that we would like him to support the event. Well, this guy's just like all business, and he's like, "How much do you want from me?" And of course, our CEO is just, oh, and he just kind of stammered a little bit, and he didn't even get a word out. And this gentleman, he says, I'm committing today. I am committing $500,000 to the campaign. I'm writing a check for $100,000 today, and I'll make good on the rest. And we were just like, oh, this is when you just want to, do one of these. It was awesome. So really exciting. But he loved the food bank. His group would come down and they would sort cans every holiday season. He would spend money on turkeys, and this just elevated his relationship with the food bank just phenomenally. I mean, it was awesome. So, okay, so grants. Last time I was here, I talked about grants. So grants, the pros is they're larger gifts. I mean, you can get significant gifts that come in. In a day, I can write a grant that brings in as much as it takes 6 months planning an event. So they're bigger gifts. It's very cost effective. So that less time it can be very cost effective. It's often an anchor for programs. So especially in the human service sector, they'll bring in government funds, which are a few $100,000 a year, anchor the operations, and then they'll bring in other money on top of it to bring in the rest. The community really adds value. The process of writing a grant, it really helps you flush out the case for support, and so that's a definite pro. The cons is it's a delayed decision. If you need money today, you're not going to write a grant. It's going to be 3, maybe 6 months before you get a decision. So it takes a little bit. It's one-way communication, so it's just a written document. And sometimes they put out these requirements, and if you get the font wrong, they tell you it's got to be a 12-point font. You use 11, they're tossing it in the trash, and there's no way you can argue against it. So it's just a one-way communication. Yes? It depends on what they've done since the scandal. Yeah, donor beware. I mean, just like buyer beware. I would be thoughtful about that. That's the thing about charities is your integrity is everything. You're going to do everything to protect it. So you need to be very, very careful about that. I would ask a lot of questions before I made a gift to an organization who there was, major mismanagement of funds, or I don't know what that story is, but yeah. I don't know, but integrity is everything in a nonprofit, and yeah. So grants are always restricted by the nature of them. I'm requesting $500,000, for X. You got to use it for X. You have to. And it requires internal buy-in, and I guess for those that I'm meaning the big ones, the big government grants, you're essentially implementing new programs, and so if a grant writer writes it in isolation, it kind of sets things up for failure, because the money comes in and they're happy, but it's like, oh, you mean we got to do this work? Who put this together? And if the grant writer's just coming up with good ideas, that can be a bad thing. So planned giving, these are your folks who are going to leave you in their will. Huge money potential, huge. This is often the largest gift anyone will ever make in their life. It can be, once again, it can be restricted or unrestricted. They can earmark it and say, I want it to go to the children's program, or it can just be, thank you, I love your mission. They're usually larger gifts. It's highly personable, but sometimes it's a surprise. 80% of planned gifts are bequests, and sometimes it's just a complete surprise. You have no idea you're in their will. You get a call from the attorney and that says, I have a check for $500,000. Do you want me to mail it or you want to pick it up? And this is a complete surprise. And sometimes they don't want you to know that they've left you in their will, because then you might think that you should, I don't know. Sometimes they don't tell. So you want to understand who your donors are, what their interests are, and go where they are. So the cons is it's deferred revenue. You may hear about I left you in my will. Well, then they have to die. So it's deferred. So it can be surprise gifts. Some of the vehicles are somewhat complex. As a fundraiser, I'm not going to get into any of that. I'm going to say you need to talk to your financial advisor about that. Essentially, the nonprofit, the only thing they're going to do is market it, that you accept them. We accept plan gifts. Leave us in your will or estate plan. That's all you got to do, is really just marketing. It's time intensive, and it's much smaller market of donors, but the potential for giving is really pretty big. How much time do I have left? 2 minutes. Okay, stewardship and recognition. Thank your donors, and tell them how they use their money. Okay, just a couple of tips and tricks from the field, and then I'll be about done. I gotta get my paper because I can't remember. Okay, remove the word only and unique from your vocabulary. Donors roll their eyes when they read this. Oh, you're not unique. I heard about your charity last week from this other guy. I mean, or another charity with the same. So just know that you're not. Try not to do that. Think about collaboration. Differentiate yourself. Differentiate yourself and say how you address the need and how this other guy addresses it and how you work together to solve the problem. Capitalize on your strengths, and tell donors about your partnerships. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. A lot of times people just think, we need to get new donors. We need new donors. What about your existing donors? Most of the time they're just forgotten, and they're just, you don't have a relationship with them. But yet the focus becomes on new. I would say look at who's giving to you currently. Ask for and respect communication preferences. If somebody says they don't want your newsletter, don't send it to them. Just honor and respect how they want to come at you. So I could feel bad about the $250,000 gift over the phone, or through the mail, or through voicemails or whatever. But that's how she wanted to give. That's how she wanted to engage. So remember, it's a real relationship, not just a transaction. Know your donors. Talk to them. And then learn from your mistakes. As you go out and you raise money, if you feel like there's a good fit still and you hear a no, keep at it. Keep at it. See how you can get in front of them. See how you can get them to know your organization, because you'll get a lot of no's. You just will. So, okay, so that's my presentation. But I want to tell you about an event that I have coming up that I'm working with Linda on. We're going to be doing a grant writing workshop on May 19th. I think you all have a postcard there. And it's going to be at the University Club. And we're charging $99, but tonight, and actually through Friday, we're going to charge $59. So if you're interested in coming to learn about how to write grants for your organization, that's really I've done all kinds of fundraising, but that's really what my special gift is, I guess. So if you want to come, we have a website here on the card. Not that card, but on your card. Or you can go on there and register, or you can sign up tonight, right, Linda? Okay.